There are a lot of holidays during the latter part of the year, especially during the winter season. So what better way to celebrate these holidays than with your friends throwing a special holiday-themed campaign? So in this video, we'll be going over spells that could very much fit the winter theme of any campaigns you might be running as a way to spend time with your friends during the stressful and busy season. Starting things off with a great freeze is Otiluke's Freezing Sphere from the Player's Handbook. This is a 6th level spell that has a range of 300 feet and allows you to shoot out a globe of cold energy at a point you can see, exploding into a 60-foot radius sphere that deals 10d6 to any creature that fails a Constitution saving throw, or half as much on a success. While it might not sound in the spirit of winter, there is another aspect of the spell presented that could change your mind. Along with dealing a large amount of damage over an area that's triple the size of a fireball, Otiluke's Freezing Sphere also has the ability to freeze bodies of water or similar liquids, not including water-based creatures, up to a depth of 6 inches or over 30 feet square. While the body of water would only be frozen for a minute, it does create the perfect environment to do some ice skating on if nothing else. Obviously, this isn't ideal, but it's the thought that counts. However, if you're not a fan of that, you could also put on a show by casting the spell into the air or creating a throwable orb as an alternative that shatters on impact, producing the same effect. You would need a pretty big area to show off the sphere and make sure no one is in the blast radius. But having an ice show is never a bad thing. Unfortunately, Otiluke's Freezing Sphere does come with the downside of being a high-level spell, and doesn't really have what it takes to be a proper flavor option for the winter holidays. It just has enough to maybe be considered for any winter-themed events at all, so it takes the number 10 spot on this list. Altering appearances at number 9, we have a two-way tie between Disguise Self and Alter Self, both from the Player's Handbook. Both of these spells effectively achieve the same thing, but in slightly different ways. Disguise Self is a 1st level spell that allows you to change the appearance of your clothing, armor, weapons, etc. into something else for up to 1 hour or until dismissed. You can make yourself appear taller, shorter, wider, or thinner, but the spell doesn't actually change your body type, as it is all an illusion. Meanwhile, Alter Self is a 2nd level spell that requires concentration for up to an hour and allows you to assume a different form entirely. While you cast the spell to give yourself a swim speed with an aquatic adaptation, or give yourself natural weapons for growing claws, fangs, etc., the real winner of this spell is the ability to completely change your entire appearance. What you look like, how tall you are, how much you weigh, your facial features, sound of your voice, hair length, coloration, and any other distinguishing features are all the things you can change. You can also look like a different race entirely, though you don't take on any of their statistics. Effectively, Alter Self works the same way as a changeling's racial ability that allows them to do the same exact thing word for word as an action. Both of these spells are great tools for infiltration and keeping out of sight, but in this instance, they would be used more for festive purposes. Disguise Self can be used to grant you a more festive-like appearance in a pinch without needing to change into something else, while giving yourself a bit of protection by allowing you to disguise your armor and weapons in case Scrooges crash their winter festival or something. This could be compounded with Alter Self to make yourself take on the appearance of a legendary mythical creature called Santa Claus, complete with the white beard, hat, and voice. What better way to entertain the children at a winter festival than with a jolly man of legend that promises to fulfill the wishes of all the city's children by delivering presents to them in a single night. Blasting its way at the number 8 spot on this list is the Pyrotechnics spell from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This 2nd level spell comes with a range of 60 feet and allows you to choose an area of non-magical flame you can see within range, and with a 5-foot cube and extinguish the flame. When you do so, you can choose whether to create smoke or fireworks. The smoke creates a 20-foot radius area of thick black smoke that persists for 1 minute, or until a strong wind disperses it. This area is considered heavily obscured, which is good for keeping out of sight, but not necessarily for celebration. Fireworks, meanwhile, create a dazzling display of colors that blind creatures within 10 feet of the target until the end of your next turn if they fail a Constitution saving throw to avoid it. While you can't technically do it in the air, you could set up some light sources along the ceiling, or maybe have some mage hands holding candles in the air while you cast Pyrotechnics on them in celebration for winter holidays by creating your own fireworks show. And being only a 2nd level spell, you could have plenty of uses on it depending on your level. However, not being inherently able to shoot fireworks into the sky does kind of damper its place on this list. But if your DM is cool with it, they might make an exception just for this once. Overall, Pyrotechnics brings what every celebration needs in one way or another, and is perfect for most holiday seasons in general. So it takes number 8 spot on this list, even if they're not the fireworks we're looking for. However, if the DM decides to let actual fireworks into the game, then perhaps Pyrotechnics could be a spell you could use to enhance their effectiveness, creating an even bigger fireworks show as a bit of some homebrew idea. But if you're looking for something you can use for the sky, then take a look no other than our number 7 pick for this list, Skywrite, from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This is a 2nd level concentration spell with a duration of 1 hour, and has a range of wherever you can see. All it does is allow you to form up to 10 words in a part of the sky that you can see. The words are made up of clouds and remain in place for the spell's duration, dissipating once the spell ends. However, it does come with the downside of dispersing permanently if a strong wind comes in and blows the words away. While the spell could be useful for sending important messages across large landscapes, it could also be used for more flavorful and a more wholesome way. Perhaps you want to wish as many people as possible a Happy New Year, or write an inspirational quote in the air to give people hope during a celebration, or even have some lighthearted fun with another person that might know the spell by telling jokes or creating skits. And because this spell is a ritual spell, that means you can technically cast it as many times as you want. Granted, you spend an extra 10 minutes doing so. Fortunately, this spell is low level enough that, even if you aren't a high level spellcaster with access to the spell, you can still use it at a large handful of times before running out. Overall, a fun, flavorful spell with some niche uses that takes number 7 on this list for being reusable and harmless, while also acting as a way to breathe life into a winter celebration, wishing them a happy Rhymes Day or whatever holiday your campaign makes up for the occasion. But now it's time for a spell that has a way with words for a number 6 on this list, Motivational Speech from Acquisitions Incorporated. This is a 3rd level spell that takes 1 minute to cast but has a 1 hour duration, no concentration required. Essentially, the way this spell works is by giving an inspirational speech to motivate people around you, strangers or no, whether they have something to be motivated about or not. Then you choose up to 5 creatures to receive 5 temporary hit points and advantage on wisdom saving throws. Additionally, if a creature affected by this spell is hit by an attack, it has advantage on the next attack roll it makes. But once the creature loses their temporary hit points granted by this spell, the spell ends. While 5 temporary hit points doesn't sound like much, it does benefit from scaling pretty well when upcasting using higher level spell slots, increasing the amount of temp HP by 5 per spell slot used above 3rd. Fortunately though, you aren't really using this spell as a means of protection. Rather, you'd be using this spell as a means of giving a speech to your friends and family at a festive event. Perhaps you wish to share how much they mean to you, or how much they've helped you at a bad time, or something similar. While you might argue that a spell isn't very necessary, maybe you're not the best speaker in the world and want everybody to see how important you have to say is. And then, of course, you can grant the benefits of this spell to your closest allies for whatever reasons if you want to. While a great defensive support spell on its own, the reason it takes number 6 on this list is mostly because you can always achieve the same effect of making an inspirational speech at a Rhymes Day party. But motivational speech can still be a way to at least aid you, or attempt to give a toast to strangers and friends alike, and is a great flavor option for the holidays, so it makes the list. Sprouting its way up this list at number 5, we have Druid Grove from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This 6th level spell requires 10 minutes to cast, but lasts for 24 hours. Perfect for a special day. As for what it does, it allows you to invoke the spirits of nature to protect an area outdoors or underground. The area can be as small as a 30-foot cube or as large as a 90-foot one, and creates 3 effects that affect any creatures you don't specify are immune to it while in the area. The first effect allows you to fill any number of 5-foot squares on the ground with thick fog that obscures vision and makes it harder to move in by forcing creatures to spend an extra 2 feet of movement for every foot of movement they spend. Creatures immune to the effect only see a bit of soft mist with motes of green light floating in the air. The second effect is grasping undergrowth, that the caster can fill any number of 5 feet squares that aren't filled with fog with grasping vines and weeds that emulate the effects of the entangle spell. Creatures immune to the spell will find the vines and weeds soft and can even reshape them into seats or beds. The third effect allows you to animate up to 4 trees in an area, causing them to uproot themselves from the ground and become awakened trees in terms of statistics, except they can't speak. These trees will find anything that isn't immune to this effect until they're driven off or slain, and will also obey your spoken commands. Once the magic wears off, they become ordinary trees again, and take root again if possible. One last thing of note is that you can place an additional spell effect inside the grove if you want. Gust of Wind and Windwall can be placed at 2 locations of your choice, while Spike Growth can be placed at 1 location of your choice. Creatures immune to these effects will feel the wind as a fragrant, gentle breeze, while Spike Growth is completely harmless to them. While an excellent spell for creating dangerous terrain for your enemies while making a safe zone for you and your allies, you can totally use this spell to create a more festive atmosphere for a winter holiday event. The soft mist with green motes of light can look beautiful, almost fey-like in the right light, while plant-like chairs and beds for the weeds and vines you create give a nature-like feel to it. While on the subject of winter holiday celebrations, however, doing this near a pine forest could allow you to awaken 4 pine trees to help out around the holiday event, or to keep people entertained. And what's even more, the material components required to even cast the spell in the first place is a mistletoe that was harvested with golden sickle under the light of a full moon, which the spell consumes for the casting, making this a dead giveaway for contender for this list if nothing else. Pelting the number 4 spot on this list is Snilloc's Snowball Swarm from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This 2nd level spell creates a flurry of magic snowballs that you can use to pelt creatures in a 5-foot radius sphere centered at a point you choose within 90 feet and deals 3d6 cold damage on a failed dexterity save, or half as much on a success. While a bit too deadly by normal means, a spell centered around the idea of throwing snowballs at one another sounds perfect for the winter holiday season, especially in areas it tends to snow a lot. Unfortunately, due to the potential lethal nature of this spell, it can't go any higher on this list, but it is an excellent way to fight off enemies while keeping within the spirit of the season, so there's always that. And if your DM wants to make Snilloc's Snowball Swarm work in non-combat settings, then perhaps you can make it only summon 1 snowball that you can target 1 creature with and doesn't deal any damage to them. Of course, maybe you would prefer a wizard battle with snowballs instead, and just have the spell still conjure a swarm of the snowballs, but for non-lethal damage, which isn't really a thing in D&D 5e, since the only way non-lethally a creature can work in this edition of the game is by declaring a non-lethal attack upon finishing off a creature with a melee attack. In the 2014 edition anyway. Either way, while you may have to homebrew the spell to make it work for some harmless fun, Snilloc's Snowball Swarm is still a perfect choice for this list, by its very nature of being, well, snowballs. Manipulating the temperature and creating wind chill effects at the number 3 spot on this list is Control Weather from the Player's Handbook. This is an 8th level spell that does exactly what the name suggests, lets you change and take control of the weather. It takes 10 minutes to cast, requires concentration to sustain it up to 8 hours, and has a range of self and stretches out in a 5-mile radius. You do have to be outdoors for this spell, since you do need a clear path to the sky or else the spell ends early. But if you're on top of a roof or a tower or something, then this shouldn't be a problem, especially if you want to be as uninterrupted as you can possibly be, rather than using this spell while out on the streets. When you first cast a spell, you can change the current weather conditions as determined by your DM based on the current climate and season. The things you're allowed to change are the precipitation, temperature, and wind, as well as the wind direction, which all takes about 1d4 times 10 minutes to take effect. You can only change the weather again once the changes kick in and the weather returns to normal gradually over time once the spell itself ends. And what better use for controlling weather is there than to make sure the weather is in a favorable condition for a winter breeze event? More than likely, if your DM is kind enough, you'd be able to instantly set the precipitation to allow for snow, the temperature to be cold, and the wind to be calm as you create the perfect winter wonderland for the holidays for the next 8 hours. While it might take a little longer for the hotter parts of the world, you can also do the same for those parts of the world, since every time you change the weather, you're only allowed to change the current conditions 1 stage at a time, lowering it or raising it according to the current conditions. That being said, being able to create the perfect outdoor landscape for your winter holiday needs is perfect for this list. However, the only downside of all of this is the fact that it's locked behind an 8th level spell, which most campaigns might not have access to. So perhaps you could pay your local Archmage or Archdruid to join in for the fun by allowing them to cast the spell themselves. Still, the fact that there is a way to make the weather the perfect conditions for not just the winter, but for pretty much any seasonal event, is why Control Weather takes such a high spot on this list at number 3. And making its way at number 2 on this list is Creation from the Player's Handbook. This 5th level spell requires a casting time of 1 minute and allows you to create items out of non-living objects, i.e. rope from vegetable matter, armor from precious metals, etc., etc. However, these would only last temporarily, so you would still have to be careful with how you use the spell. While you could make gifts for other people, it would need to be something that wouldn't last longer than the listed duration of the materials used. And in the instance where you combine multiple materials together to make something like a jeweled crown or a diamond-encrusted tiara, the duration would end up being the shortest of the materials listed. However, if you're doing a themed event where, say, you want everyone to feel special just for the day, then this spell is perfect for doing so. For example, if you're helping out with a play, you might want to make a king's crown rather than rely on a poorly made prop to make it feel just a bit more authentic. or fulfill the dreams of a young girl feeling like a royal princess, even if for a few moments. While there are plenty of uses for this spell, it is usually best up to the player on how far they want their imagination to go. In other words, this spell's usefulness is entirely within a player's hands, but doesn't make it any less worthy of being on this list. Unfortunately, the biggest reason why creation takes number 2 on this list and not the number 1 spot is due to the short duration of the materials used. And you can't really make anything that allows you to permanently give your friends and loved ones something special long-term, like a pendant or a pair of earrings, since they would just dissipate in a matter of time. Perhaps if this spell allowed for more immediate benefits that lasted longer for the time it's available, then it would take a higher spot on this list. And speaking of, gathering near the number 1 spot on this list is Hero's Feast from the Player's Handbook. This 6th level spell requires 10 minutes to cast, as well as gem encrusted bowl worth at least 1,000 pieces of gold for its material component that the spell consumes on use. But what it does is create a great feast, complete with food and drink that all takes 1 hour to consume and disappears at the end of the time as well. Once the hour is up, you gain the benefits of having any poison or disease affecting them cured while gaining immunity to the frightened and poison condition. You have advantage on all wisdom saving throws you make and increase your maximum number of hit points temporarily by 2d10. All of these benefits last for 24 hours, meaning you can cast the spell right before a long rest and still have 16 hours of these benefits left over for the entire adventuring day. However, the biggest reason this spell takes number 1 on this list actually does not include any of the benefits listed on the spell itself, rather than what it represents. When it comes to any holiday or seasonal event, nothing brings people closer together than having some food or drink. This spell can be used as a way to bring friends and family alike closer together. After all, there is nothing that matters more during the Winter Breeze event, or Rhymes Day, or whatever winter-themed holiday your DM comes up with, than spending time with the people closest to you. So what better way to do that than with a great big feast? And that's the list. If you enjoyed this video or have any ideas for future videos similar to this one, I'd love to write them down in the comments below. In the meantime, happy holidays if you celebrate any, or have a fantastic day if you don't. And as always, take care.